Every single year, there are a handful of players that flat out decide fantasy football championships. Draft them, and you're celebrating in December. Pass on them, and you're kicking yourself all season long. Today, I'm breaking down 5 must-draft players. 1 at quarterback, 1 at running back, 1 at wide receiver, 1 at tight end, and a bonus player. And if you don't grab them, trust me, you're going to regret it all season long. Now, it's weird to call the QB5 off the board a must-draft, but you must draft Jalen Hurts this year. I don't understand why this guy is going off as a QB5, and I understand in some leagues he does go as a QB4 above Joe Burrow, but according to Fantasy Pros consensus ADP, he's a QB5 right behind Joe Burrow. This is a guy who outside of his rookie year has finished as a QB6 or better every year in points per game. He's averaged over 21 points per game in each one of those years. He's scored 10 or more rushing touchdowns each one of those years, and he's gone over 600 rushing yards. And guess what? He's going to do it again. Last year, in the 14 games he started and finished, he was a top 10 QB 9 times and a top 5 QB 6 times. Compare that to Josh Allen, who had 10 top 10 weeks and 6 top 5 weeks in 16 games. Or Jaden Daniels, who had 8 top 10 weeks and 7 top 5 weeks in 17 games. Or the aforementioned Joe Burrow, who had 11 top 10 weeks and 6 top 5 weeks also in 17 games. Now, I'm not saying to not draft those guys. Those guys are great quarterbacks. They're going to be great in fantasy. But again, Jalen Hurts is usually the guy that goes last out of all those quarterbacks, and he gives you very similar production, very similar weekly upside. There's been many drafts I've done this year where I've gotten Jalen Hurts in the 5th round of fantasy drafts. That's just crazy to me. And while there was some concern earlier in the offseason that the tush push was going to get banned, it didn't. The tush push is alive and well. We're going to see this guy get 10 plus rushing touchdowns again, 600 plus rushing yards again. And look, if something should happen to Saquon Barkley, should he miss some games? Should the run game struggle compared to last year? Or should they actually be in games where they need to throw the ball more? We know Jalen Hurts can do it. He can pick up the slack. So it's not like we have to worry about what if his rushing isn't as big this year, because he can still get it done through the air. But of course, if something happens to Saquon, it means he's probably just going to run the ball more. This is a guy who can finish as the highest scoring quarterback on any given week, has top 5 floor on any given week, and we're getting them at a bit of a discount. So again, if you're going to go elite quarterback, those other guys are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. But if you are in your draft and Jalen Hurts is still on the board and those other guys are gone and you don't draft them, you're probably going to be kicking yourself all season long. Now for tight end, I'm going to go with David Njoku. This guy's been a top 8 tight end 3 straight years in points per game. And last year, he was 4th. And now he gets reunited with his old pal, and I mean old, Joe Flacco. Because Joe Flacco has already been named the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Whether you like it or not, it's going to be Flacco time. And look what these guys did together back in 2023. From weeks 14 through the first playoff game that year, David Njoku scored 27, 26, 16, 17, and 16 fantasy points. And from weeks 14 to 17 that year, he wasn't just a tight end 1. He obliterated all other tight ends. He outscored the tight end 2 by 4.6 fantasy points per game that year. And over that stretch, Joe Flacco attempted 40 or more passes in all but one game. Even last year with the Colts, in the 7 games that Joe Flacco started, he attempted 35 or more passes in 5 of those games. For whatever reason, when teams decide Joe Flacco is going to be the starter, they just throw the ball a ton. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's the fact that teams that are starting Joe Flacco probably aren't elite teams, probably aren't winning many games and have to play from behind. Maybe that's it. But for whatever reason, Joe Flacco is going to sling it, and that's going to be good for David Njoku. And last year, this Browns team, with the defense not being as good, the run game being non-existent without Nick Chubb, finished 1st in pass play percentage. They're probably going to be one of the leading teams in pass play percentage again this year. So Flacco should once again be slinging it 35, 40, 40 plus times a game, and that is going to be great for David Njoku. And David Njoku is not some tight end that is out there to block. He's out there to catch passes. He's great at catching the ball, and he's great at yards after catch. In fact, when you look on Player Profiler, his player comparison, it's Travis Kelce. That should tell you the kind of game and the kind of player that David Njoku is. This guy is poised for another top 8 fantasy season, maybe even another top 5 fantasy season, and he's a complete afterthought in your fantasy drafts. He's one of these guys you can get late, middle rounds as your tight end 1, and you don't have to worry about the position. You can just set and forget David Njoku every single week and be totally fine at tight end, and maybe be more than fine at tight end. So don't let somebody else in your league get David Njoku, or you might regret it for all of 2025. Do you want to play in fun fantasy leagues with Pierre and myself that have unique features you can't find anywhere else that absolutely 10x the fantasy football experience? Well, now you can. Just go to your App Store or the Google Play Store and download our app, DraftLane. Create a free account in seconds and then head to draftlane.com/play to join a free league today and experience the future of fantasy football right now. Now, wide receiver, there's a ton of wide receivers I've talked up this year, but I'm going to say George Pickens is going to be the guy I think you're going to regret if you don't draft him this year. Now, sure, George Pickens has not lived up to expectations so far in his career, but I think that's going to change this year with Dallas because he's going from a team that last year ranked 28th in pass play percentage to a team that ranked 11th, and that was while starting backup Cooper Rush for most of the year. And I know he's now competing with a true stud wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb, but I think that's going to actually be good for George Pickens because now teams can't just put two high safeties deep and say beat us underneath. They can't double team this guy all game long because they have to worry about a true number one elite wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb. And I'm not worried about the targets here because over the last 2 years, the Cowboys have ranked first in expected fantasy points to wide receivers and first in actual fantasy points to wide receivers. There's enough here for both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens to have great years. And also, unlike what the Steelers did with George Pickens, which was line him up as the X on the line of scrimmage and basically tell him just run deep, run a bunch of go routes, the Cowboys are going to use him in different ways. They're already talking about using him all across the formation, getting them more routes across the middle, those underneath routes. Get him in space where he can be a yard after catch monster. We know this guy is one of the freakiest athletes in the NFL. Get this guy the ball and let him do his thing. Please, Cowboys. I think we're going to see that this year. I think we are really going to see George Pickens unleashed. And he's not just a freaky athlete, he's actually become a very good wide receiver. Last year, he had a 72% success rate versus man and a 77% success rate versus press. These are two things an ex-outside wide receiver must be good at, and he's gotten to that point of his game. Now, I will say his numbers against zone leave something to be desired, but he could always get better against this. If he improved so much as a rookie in man and press, why can't he get better against zone coverage as well? And he doesn't need to be one of the best zone beaters for the type of role he's going to have. He's developed into a good wide receiver. He's already a great athlete. Now he's finally in a situation that can utilize him the way he needs to be, and we can finally see this guy's ceiling in 2025. And currently right now in drafts, he's kind of in that wide receiver 3 range. I don't see how you can pass on George Pickens if you're drafting him in that range of the, 30 to 36 wide receivers. Just way too much upside. I mean, we have other examples of this like the Eagles with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, the Bengals with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I really think George Pickens can have a T. Higgins type of year this year in Dallas, even with CeeDee Lamb. And if you don't take this guy when he's on the board and available for you, yeah, that's going to be a big regret. Now for running back, I'm going to go with the Chiefs running back, Isaiah Pacheco, who, had I done this video last year, would have definitely been on that video because I was all in on Isaiah Pacheco. And look, it looked like a great call for 2 weeks. In the week 1, he had 18 opportunities. In week 2, he had 24 opportunities. And then he left late in week 2 with a fractured fibula, and that was pretty much it, right? I mean, he did return later in the season, but let's be real. Nowhere near 100% when he came back. And then for most of the offseason this year, I was kind of hesitant to draft him because the Chiefs, they went out, signed Elijah Mitchell from the 49ers. They brought back Kareem Hunt. They drafted Brashard Smith. And I was like, well, if they really like Isaiah Pacheco, would they be doing all this at running back? But, the more I look into it and the more I think about it, I just think this is Isaiah Pacheco's backfield this year. He looks like he's fully healthy in training camp, running like he's angry at the ground, and I just believe he's far and away the best running back in this running back room. Let's not forget, back in 2023, when he was fully healthy, he had the 8th highest opportunity share of any running back, the 7th most red zone touches of any running back, and the 11th most explosive runs. He's a 216-pound running back. He's got a 31 BMI, and he also has a 99th percentile speed score. I can't sit here and tell you hey, this guy is not at risk for injury because of his BMI and his weight because he just got hurt last year. Let's be real, that was a bit of a fluke injury. We know this guy can handle a workhorse role. We know he can be the lead back in this Chiefs offense. We've seen it before, and when we did see it, he was very good, and I think we're going to see that again this year. But unlike last year where you had to draft this guy in round 3, he's not even going as a top 24 running back in fantasy drafts right now. I just think that is ridiculous for the potential upside of a RB1 in this Chiefs backfield. We're talking top 15, top 10 running back potential, and you're getting him outside the top 24. I don't think you can let Isaiah Pacheco fall past you at that range. And if he does, and you don't get him, and one of your other league mates does, and he is the workhorse running back here, and he's putting up big games, he's catching enough passes, he's scoring touchdowns, you're going to regret that all season long. So don't live in regret in 2025. Just draft Isaiah Pacheco instead. And I promised a bonus pick. It's going to be wide receiver Rome Odunze of the Chicago Bears. Now, I'll be honest, I was getting a little nervous about the Bears offense with all the camp reports. It didn't sound good. It didn't sound like Caleb Williams and the offense was clicking with Ben Johnson. Started to get a little bit worried, but then the preseason game came and I said, okay, I think I feel okay here. And sure, it's easy to say, well, the Bills didn't play all their starters. They played some starters, but not all of their starters. And it's easy to look at the numbers and be like, whoa, big numbers for Caleb, but that's not really why I'm excited. Why I'm excited is because I saw a completely different Caleb Williams in that game. His footwork, his calmness in the pocket, the fact that he didn't take a snap and feel like he had to run for his life. Because let's not forget, not only did they bring in Ben Johnson, they absolutely improved this offensive line. Pro Football Focus now has this offensive line ranked 4th going into the season this year, and they're saying it's their most improved offensive line in the NFL. And let's not also forget this guy was the number 1 pick last year. We know the pedigree is there. We know the potential is there. And if Ben Johnson can get it out of this guy, he's going to lift everybody up, and that includes Rome Odunze. And I know they drafted Luther Burden. I know they drafted Colston Loveland, but those guys are rookies. They're going to need time. They're not going to be instant impact guys. I think this is going to be DJ Moore and Rome Odunze getting the bulk of the targets in this offense. And if the offense looks anything like it looked in that preseason game, if Caleb looks as comfortable as he looked in that preseason game, if the offensive line is giving him time, Rome Odunze is set to absolutely smash. This is actually a very good player, and I don't think people realize it. Because coming out of college, he was a great prospect. He was able to run the entire route tree. He had an 87th percentile success rate versus man, 81st percentile success rate versus zone, and a very strong 92nd percentile success rate versus press. Now, admittedly, he wasn't quite that good as a rookie. I mean, being in that offense didn't help, but he did only have a 72% success rate versus man and a 78% success rate versus zone and press. But look, let's compare that to other rookie wide receivers last year like Malik Nabers, who had a 75% success rate versus man, a 79% success rate versus zone, and a 76% rate versus press. Or a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., who had 75% success versus man, 77% success versus zone, and 80% versus press. It's not like those guys were miles better than Rome Odunze. He was right there in line with them. He just was in a far worse situation. That has been fixed for 2025. I really think Rome Odunze is going to have a breakout year 2 this year. I believe in this Bears offense, and he's being drafted barely as a wide receiver 3 in fantasy drafts. Look, if you're on the clock between Pickens and Odunze, make the choice, but hopefully you can get both those guys, because I think if you don't, you're going to regret it all year that you didn't take a chance on these guys. I know Odunze disappointed last year. Pickens is pretty much disappointed his whole career, but 2025 is going to be the year for these guys, and if you don't draft them, you're going to regret it. And if you're not subscribed to Fantasy Endgame and you're not watching all the videos we're putting out to help you win your draft, you're probably going to regret it too. You can find everything you need in our playlist right here.